My fiancée hid my passport right before a crucial business trip, so I'd miss it and spend time with her. I found it and dumped her immediately. I, 29 male, live in a mid-sized city, working a steady administrative job at a local firm. It's not exactly glamorous, but over the past few years, I managed to land a life-changing opportunity. My boss selected me for a series of international business trips, the kind that could reshape my career. These trips would open doors, forge professional contacts, and help me secure a more senior role. I was proud. I'd worked hard, and it felt like my dedication was finally paying off. For the first trip, I booked my flight months in advance, double-checked all my documents, and set up a meticulous schedule. My fiancée and I had been together a little over a year, and until recently, I believed she was supportive of my ambitions. She once told me she admired my drive, and her excitement for my upcoming business travel seemed genuine. She even helped me shop for new luggage and clothes. However, in the weeks leading up to my departure, I noticed subtle shifts in her demeanor. Late-night conversations became tense. She'd sigh dramatically whenever I mentioned my itinerary or the potential promotions that might follow. One evening, I teased that I'd bring her a souvenir from overseas, something special to mark my first real business trip abroad. She forced a smile, but her eyes held an odd look. I asked if she felt left out. She shrugged it off, insisting, "I'm totally fine. I just wish we had more time together before you go." At first, I chalked it up to normal relationship stress. After all, traveling for work isn't easy on either partner. But a few days before I was due to depart, she started dropping bizarre hints. She'd say things like, "This trip might not be as important as you think," or "What if you miss the flight? Then we could do something spontaneous." Sometimes, I caught a flash of desperation in her voice. I'd reassure her that we'd still have plenty of weekends and that this was just one big step for my career. But the real trouble began the morning before I left. My passport was always kept in a specific desk drawer in our shared bedroom. I placed it there right after picking up my updated visa paperwork. That day, as I put together my final documents, I went to retrieve it, and it wasn't there. My stomach lurched. The entire area was empty. I combed through my desk, then tore apart every drawer in sight. Nothing. She emerged from hallway, towel in hand, fresh out of the shower. "What are you looking for?" she asked casually. I told her about the missing passport, and she feigned concern. "That's weird," she said. "I saw it yesterday." "Are you sure you haven't misplaced it?" Misplaced it? I'm meticulous with these things. I turned the bedroom upside down, rummaging through the closet, under the bed, the laundry hamper, anywhere it could have fallen. Frustrated and confused, I told her, "This makes no sense. I'd swear it was in the desk." She offered to help search, half-heartedly opening a few cabinets in the kitchen, then shrugging. "Sorry, babe, I have no idea." Time was running out. My flight was early the next morning. I called a friend, ranting about the bizarre vanishing passport scenario, worried that I'd have to cancel my trip. He tried to calm me down, suggesting maybe I left it at the office, or I'd put it somewhere unusual in a rush. But a deeper suspicion started gnawing at me. My fiancée's repeated remarks about me missing the flight, coupled with how she was suspiciously unhelpful now, raised red flags. In desperation, I scrambled to recall the last time I physically saw the passport. 2 nights earlier, I'd been double-checking my documents at the desk. She'd walked into the room, asked if I really had to run off so soon, then left in a huff. Could she have taken it in a misguided attempt to sabotage the trip? It sounded far-fetched, but the possibility wouldn't leave my mind. I confronted her gently, testing the waters. "Are you sure you haven't moved it by mistake?" Her eyes flickered with something unreadable before she said, "I told you, I haven't touched it. Don't blame me because you're disorganized." That response stung. I'm not disorganized. If anything, I'm borderline obsessive about important documents. But I couldn't prove anything yet, and the tension in the house was sky-high. I decided to keep searching, checking every nook and cranny while texting colleagues to see if I could board with a different form of ID. They confirmed I absolutely needed my passport, no exceptions. My job, my entire future, hung on this. As the day wore on, my frustration escalated. I scoured the apartment with methodical precision, kitchen drawers, bathroom cabinets, even old storage boxes in the closet. My fiancée drifted around, occasionally glancing at me with an almost smug expression. She offered no constructive help, only little jabs. You shouldn't have left it until the last minute, or I guess this trip isn't happening if you can't find it. Her words flicked at my anger. The idea that she might be actively hoping I'd fail started feeling more real. But I still struggled to believe she deliberately hid something so important. That's a serious form of sabotage, not just a silly spat. Nevertheless, her behavior made me suspicious enough that I began checking the oddest places, her closet space, her nightstand drawers. I didn't want to accuse her outright, but my instincts were screaming that she knew more than she let on. That evening, after hours of fruitless searching, I was both mentally and physically drained. My flight was less than 12 hours away. I flopped onto the couch, phone in hand, calling my boss to explain the situation. He was sympathetic but firm. If you can't make the flight, we'll have to send someone else. We won't have time to fix last-minute changes in the schedule. I felt my stomach twist. This trip was crucial. Missing it would torpedo my credibility with the company, especially after they spent resources to secure my place on the team. Around dinner time, my fiancée casually asked if I wanted her to order takeout. The sheer normalcy of the question enraged me. It was as if she was unaffected by my crisis. With a forced calm, I said, "No, I'm not hungry." She shrugged, turned on the TV, and started scrolling through her phone. That's when something clicked in my head. The one place I hadn't thoroughly checked was her personal bag, the one she often carried around. I never rummaged through it before, felt it would be a breach of privacy. But desperate times called for desperate measures. She'd left it by the coffee table when she'd gone to the kitchen. My heart pounded as I quietly inched toward it, scolding myself for suspecting her, but also knowing I might be seconds from the truth. Carefully, I unzipped a side pocket. Nothing but tissues and a couple of cosmetics. My hand trembled as I reached into a hidden interior compartment. My fingertips brushed against a flat rectangular shape, smooth on the surface. With a jolt, I realized it felt exactly like a passport cover. My pulse hammered in my ears. Slowly, I eased it out, and my breath caught. It was my passport, tucked into a side compartment of her bag. I stood there, hand shaking, staring at the navy blue booklet. If there had been any lingering doubt about her involvement, it vanished in an instant. She'd taken it. She'd hidden it. All that time she pretended to be concerned or teased me about being disorganized. She knew exactly where it was. A surge of anger and betrayal burst in my chest. Still holding the passport, I turned toward the kitchen door and called her name. She peeked her head from around the corner, a bland expression on her face, until she noticed what I was holding. Her eyes went wide, and she fumbled. "Where'd you? That's not. You must have put it there by mistake." "Are you serious?" I hissed, my voice dangerously low. "My mistake? In your bag." She stepped forward, her posture defensive. "All right, calm down. I was just worried this trip would take you away from me. I only meant to hide it for a little while, so maybe you'd miss the flight and realize how important it is to spend time with me. I was planning to give it back." "You're overreacting." Overreacting? My mind reeled. This wasn't a playful trick. She jeopardized my career, risked humiliating me in front of my boss and colleagues, all because she felt neglected. I demanded an explanation, but all she gave was a half-hearted justification. "I can't stand the thought of you leaving for weeks. I needed you to see we need time together." I stood there, disbelief mixing with fury. "You had no right," I managed, each word deliberate. "You almost cost me everything." She tried to launch into a sob story about feeling lonely, but I cut her off. I told her point blank that our relationship was over. The adrenaline and anger inside me were unstoppable now. Any love I'd felt was overshadowed by the sheer magnitude of her betrayal. She pleaded, "Don't say that. I was just desperate. I didn't think it through." But I refused to budge. I marched to the bedroom, grabbed a suitcase already half-packed, and threw in a few extra items. My flight was still in the early morning. I'd barely have enough time to get some rest. But one thing was certain, I wasn't coming back to her. If she had the gall to sabotage me like this once, who knew what else she was capable of? She followed me, voice rising in panic. "We're engaged. You can't just walk out over a mistake." I whirled around, eyes blazing. "This is more than a mistake. This is manipulation and lying. We're finished." I texted a close friend, explaining I needed a place to crash for the night. He agreed immediately. Without another word to my ex-fiancée, I walked out with my bag and my passport firmly in hand. The hallway felt claustrophobic, but I forced myself to focus on the next steps, get to my friend's place, then head to the airport at dawn. The ride over was tense. My friend greeted me at the door, alarmed by how upset I looked. We sat in his living room, and I spilled everything in a heated rush. He was as dumbfounded as I was. "She actually took your passport?" "That's insane," he said. I nodded, the anger still thrumming through me. We debated whether I should confront her more, perhaps demand an apology from her parents or relatives. But I realized it wouldn't matter. She'd crossed a line I couldn't forgive. My phone buzzed incessantly with texts and calls from her. I didn't bother checking. The one time I glanced at a notification, it read, "Please come back, let's talk." I had zero interest in talking. If there was ever a time for conversation, it was before she tried to wreck my professional future. As midnight approached, my friend insisted I get some sleep. My flight was at 7 in the morning, and I needed to be at the airport well before that. Exhaustion weighed on my eyelids, though my mind still churned with resentment and heartbreak. Lying in a spare bedroom, I replayed the entire day. The frantic search, her smug expression, discovering the passport in her bag, her twisted rationale. The betrayal cut deep, but I also felt a surge of relief that I'd found the passport in time. My dream opportunity wasn't ruined. At 5 in the morning, I woke up to my phone vibrating again. Sure enough, messages from her, voice notes, frantic apologies, even accusations that I was abandoning her. Unbelievable. I tossed the phone aside, got ready, and my friend drove me to the airport. We exchanged a brief goodbye. He told me not to cave. "She'll probably try to guilt trip you," he warned. "Stay strong." I arrived at the terminal, passport and ticket in hand, adrenaline spiking whenever I remembered how close I'd been to missing this flight. During check-in, I glimpsed my phone lighting up again. I turned it off. I didn't want to deal with her tearful pleas or manipulative excuses. Focus on the trip, I told myself. That's my priority now. On the plane, I stared out the window, the city lights shrinking below. My heart was heavy. Despite the anger, part of me still felt the sting of heartbreak. We'd been engaged, planning a future. Yet she tried to sabotage the single most important trip of my career. The plane soared into the sky, leaving behind the tangled mess of my relationship. As we ascended, I decided to channel my energy into the business ahead, putting distance, literally and emotionally, between me and that toxic situation. The following days in the foreign country were a whirlwind of meetings, presentations, and networking. I immersed myself in work, grateful for the distraction. My phone remained mostly off, except to occasionally message my boss or check in with my friend. Each time I reconnected, I'd see a flood of missed calls from her, plus messages from a few mutual acquaintances. Some were supportive, others confused, and some were downright judgmental. A few asked if I'd overreacted to a silly stunt. But that only fueled my conviction. This was no silly stunt. If she was willing to sabotage me once, who's to say it wouldn't happen again? Midway through the trip, my boss took me aside at lunch. He said I was doing excellent work, and that he appreciated the extra effort. It felt validating, especially after the chaotic start. I couldn't help but wonder what might have happened if I'd never found that passport. My entire career trajectory would have changed, and I might have been deemed unreliable. The thought made me shudder. When the trip wrapped up, I flew home exhausted but proud. The plane landed in the late afternoon. I switched on my phone to discover a barrage of new messages. My ex-fiancée was apparently going ballistic, telling everyone I'd abandoned her out of nowhere. She twisted the story, claiming I had anger issues and a control problem, refusing to mention her crucial role in hiding my passport. A couple of her relatives reached out, demanding to know why I'd punished her so harshly. I didn't bother responding. Let them believe what they want. I checked into a hotel near my old apartment, uncertain if I should even retrieve my belongings that night. She texted me once, feigning an apology, but also playing the victim. "I can't believe you left me over such a small misunderstanding," she wrote. My jaw tightened reading that. A small misunderstanding. She tried to sabotage my future for her own insecure reasons. She wanted me to lose a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. That's not small. Determined, I decided to handle it all the next day. First, I consult a lawyer friend about any potential complications, like if our shared lease or wedding plans needed specific cancellation steps. Then, I'd arrange a time to collect my stuff. Let her keep the ring if she wanted. I wanted no further ties to that fiasco. Early the next morning, I met my lawyer friend at a coffee shop. We discussed the situation. Legally, I was safe. My name was on the lease, but we'd never merged finances or property. We also never finalized any official wedding documents. He advised me to just remove my belongings, settle any joint bills, and clarify I wanted zero contact going forward. He also mentioned that hiding someone's passport could be considered a form of theft or interference with travel, though it might be a gray area if I wanted to press charges. I wasn't sure I wanted that hassle. My priority was to sever ties completely. I texted her, "I'm coming to get my stuff at noon. Please don't be there or have someone else present if you can't handle seeing me." Within minutes, she responded with frantic messages about talking it out. I repeated my boundary. "I'm not discussing this further. It's over." She typed a long paragraph, presumably apologizing, blaming stress, claiming I was overreacting. I didn't read it in full. I just told her to respect my decision. At noon, I arrived at the apartment. She wasn't there, thankfully. I let myself in with my key. The space felt different, like the energy was drained. I systematically packed my clothes, personal items, and anything else I wanted to keep. The ring I'd given her was on the kitchen counter, a note beside it, "Please reconsider." I stared at it for a moment. Then I pocketed the note, left the ring where it was, and kept moving. I had no intention of being guilt-tripped into reversing my stance. While I was loading boxes into my car, a neighbor approached me. She said, "I heard some drama." "Sorry, it didn't work out." I gave a tight smile, not wanting to broadcast details. The neighbor confided that my ex had been complaining about me all week, spinning a story that I was too focused on work and neglected her feelings. I just nodded. I didn't bother correcting her. The truth was too exhausting to recount. By late afternoon, I'd cleared out. I took one last look at the empty living room where I'd once happily planned a future with her. A flood of memories hit me, movie nights, cooking dinner together, sharing silly jokes. But those memories felt tainted now, overshadowed by her attempt to control me with deceit. Shaking off the melancholy, I locked the door and left the key in the mailbox as arranged. I headed straight to a new rental I'd signed that morning, a small one-bedroom in a quieter part of town. Over the next few days, I threw myself into unpacking and reorienting my life. My phone remained silent for a while, as I blocked her number and social media. Occasionally, mutual friends would text, asking for my side of the story. To those I trusted, I explained the real reason. Some were horrified, others tried to remain neutral. But nobody could deny how extreme her actions were. Word got back to me that she was furious about my overreaction, telling people I was the one who ended it abruptly, that I valued a business trip over our relationship. I let her talk. Let her believe that. The people who mattered knew the truth, and I was done letting her narrative hold power over me. Weeks turned into months. Work was going great. I earned a small promotion, partly thanks to the successful overseas trip. My boss hinted that more travel could be in my future if I was up for it. I agreed enthusiastically. Meanwhile, I heard through the grapevine that my ex was struggling to afford the old place on her own. Perhaps she hoped I'd swoop in and rescue her again. Instead, I focused on building a stable life without manipulative drama. Now, looking back, I see how close I came to losing that career milestone. If I'd missed that flight, I'd have lost credibility and possibly my boss's trust. Her stunt wasn't just a petty argument. It was a massive betrayal. Do I regret ending the engagement so abruptly? Not at all. I saved myself from a future of insecurity and sabotage. If there's a lesson, it's that controlling behavior in a partner doesn't always manifest in obvious ways. Sometimes it's subtle sabotage, cloaked in emotional pleas about needing time together. But hiding a passport is a line so far beyond normal conflict that it exposed her true colors. I'm grateful I found out before making a lifelong commitment. In the end, I'm at peace with my decision. The final takeaway: if someone is willing to undercut your professional and personal growth out of selfishness, that's not love, it's a power play. And once trust shatters at that level, there's no turning back. So I made my choice, hopped on that flight, and never looked back.